Hi, this is Mr. Shakespeare here with you on the 18th of July 2023. I am joined again today by psychic medium and remote viewer Liz Cross. How are we doing today, Liz?
Great. Who joins you all the other days?
Liz Cross, the other Liz Cross. Your doppelganger, your identical twin.
Oh,
Okay, so Liz, what we are doing today is a probe that someone has put in through your website, psychiclizcross.com. It's not something I know anything about or heard about, actually. But we have a bunch of questions and a bunch of people to probe. And just to outline what we're doing, apparently it is or it has been called the biggest scandal in Australian history. It's called the RoboDebt, with the former Prime Minister initiating an illegal situation to get 433,000 welfare recipients to repay debts they never owed. The debts were fake and they were created by the former government to fill a shortfall in the budget, apparently from 2015 to 2019. The government was aware of this apparently in 2014 before they implemented the scheme that was clearly illegal. So at the time, this guy, Scott Morrison, well, he was Prime Minister for part of it. So I think we need to start with him.
okay. And this is called RoboDebt?
Apparently, yeah, I don't know why they called it that or why it's been called that, but the person who put the probe in, that's what they've called it. So I'm going to go with what they've called it.
Yeah, absolutely. All right. So I'll grab him.
So grab Scott Morrison. He was the Prime Minister from 2018 to 2022.
Okay.
Hang on 1 minute.
Ooh, I don't like this man. I'm not trying to be biased, but I just have, I don't know anything about this, but I feel as soon as I connect to him, he's a very angry individual. He actually suffers with a lot of depression.
Right.
Very feels very corrupt to me. And yeah, this doesn't feel good. His energy is not good to me.
Right. But I mean, there's been a couple of other prime ministers beforehand, and I'm wondering whether we need to start with them. I know Scott Morrison was prime minister for a lot of it, but he wasn't prime minister when this started. So
right. And what year did this start? The RoboDebt?
Well, they're talking about it was planned in 2014 and it started in 2015. Let me just check. Sorry, I don't know anything about this, so I'm having to rely on all what we've been given here. Yeah, so it was there was a shortfall in the budget for 4 years. The government was aware of it in 2014, and then they basically implemented this scheme that was illegal. So I'm not sure why they did it, but I'd like to start actually not with Scott Morrison. I'd like to start with this guy. Turnbull.
Okay.
So he was prime minister from 2015 to 2018. Now, according to what I'm looking up here, he was in a Liberal coalition. So was Turnbull. So was Scott Morrison. The current prime minister is a Labour prime minister. But so there were three from the sort of Liberal coalition. He didn't last very long. One other of them seemed to. But anyway, let's start with this guy, shall we?
Yeah. Okay. So Malcolm Turnbull. Okay, I have him. His energy is a lot lighter than that of the other one.
Okay. Why did your government come up with this scheme to get welfare recipients to pay money that they didn't owe?
It was a brilliant and cunning plan, he says.
But completely
illegal.
illegal.
Just said to me. I swear to God, that's what he just said.
Okay. But completely illegal.
Is it illegal? In his mind, he says no. It's what we had to do.
I think I know the answer to this one, but I'm going to ask it. Why did they pick on welfare recipients?
Why did you pick on welfare recipients? Easy targets.
Well, of course, yeah. Okay.
That's what he said. I'm saying, what's so easy about them? He says, because they depend upon us. So they're not going to upset the government. They're not, okay, these are his words, not mine. Huh? His own personal thoughts, feelings, and opinions. They don't really stand up against the government. They're not very opinionated. They're not critical thinkers of the population, according to his own personal thoughts, feelings, and opinions. Do not write me hate mail.
Right. Okay. Apparently, according to the person who put this probe in, the government managed to claw back while he was prime minister. And while Scott Morrison was prime minister, when I say claw back, I mean they managed to steal about $750 million. Is that right?
That's correct.
However, there was a class action lawsuit that was established against the government, and the government had to pay the welfare recipients $1.8 billion. So this scheme cost the UK, the Australian government, and therefore the Australian taxpayer, $1.1 billion.
Yes, that's correct.
So, on what planet did anybody in the government think it was a good idea to grab $750 million and then have to pay 1.8 billion back?
They never intended to get caught.
Right. Okay.
They didn't think that anybody would catch this at all.
Right.
Welfare recipients are the silent portion of the population. They keep stum.
Was he aware that people have died because of the pressure that they were put under to repay this money that was never due?
Yes.
What does he call that? Collateral damage?
What do you call that? Collateral damage? No.
What does he call it then?
A government scheme.
Right. Just hold him there a minute.
Okay. Let me pause this.
Yeah, so I just asked if you could hold what's his name? Malcolm Turnbull and re-grab Scott Morrison.
He has no empathy. Malcolm Turnbull, no empathy at all. Doesn't really care who this affected. They just needed to make sure that the money was coming in. They didn't want to bring it in from the taxpayers because that's a very unpopular decision. I feel like there was an election looming in there somewhere, and it was a way to basically skim off the top. He
Right,
actually doesn't like the welfare recipients, right? But they're necessary for voting purposes.
of course, and that's how every government looks at these people. Even so, it wasn't a genius move to grab 750 million and have to pay back 1.8 billion, net loss $1.1 million or
Well,
whatever it was.
now, I mean, now it's not a genius move, but certainly
Yeah, I get it at the time.
then
They
it
didn't think
was
they were going to get caught, but nobody ever does, do they?
right. And
Right.
and the biggest concern I know from the person that submitted this probe was the fact that you were going to go to jail if you did not pay back the money. Uh, a lot of people committed suicide. They were under so much financial pressure, they were scared to death. They were told that they had to pay back like 40,000 Australian. Now you're telling welfare recipients to
Yeah,
pay
yeah.
back 40,000 Australian dollars. They have no money. Welfare recipients have nothing. So I don't know where they thought that these recipients were going to get $40,000 from, and yet they were faced with the threat of jail time, and actually some of them committed suicide.
Right. Let's get hold of Scott Morrison now.
Okay.
Actually, interestingly, doing the math, just before we ask him anything, they managed to grab $750 million. Okay. But this affected 433,000 people.
Mm.
So
You've got your calculator out again, don't you?
I have, yes.
Where would you be without that calculator?
Well, when you look at the map, I mean, that means that on average, each recipient was asked to pay back $1,732. Now I know it wasn't like that, or probably wasn't like
Right.
that, but that's what they're looking at. They're not looking to try and tap people up for 40 grand. They're saying, hey, Liz, you're a welfare recipient. You owe $1,700. Well,
Um,
normally rules say that when the government makes mistakes and hands you extra money, you don't have to pay it back because the government is deemed competent to know what they're doing. Now, of course, they're not competent in most things that they do. Most governments generally are not, but that's the way it sort of works. Right, let's ask Scott Morrison about this because he came to power apparently in August 2018. He was the prime minister in August 2018, whilst this was still going on. Now, obviously, what does he think about it?
what do you think about it while this was still going on? Did you know at the time? He's saying he really didn't know. He had other things to worry about. Mostly, certainly the portion of COVID that he had to worry about that took up most of his time. And
So he was not aware of the government clawing money back from welfare recipients when he came to power in August 2018.
Of the government clawing back money from welfare. He goes, yeah, well, I mean, if you put it like that, but certainly the breadth of the scam, he didn't
Right,
know
but what
that
I'm
it was
saying
a
is, did he
scam.
know it was a scam? Turnbull knew it was a scam. Turnbull is a piece of work.
No, he didn't know it was a scam at the piece at the time. He thought it was we overpaid welfare recipients and it was all in hand. So he
Right. Oh, in
wasn't
other words,
really
he thought it was legitimate.
right. He did at the time.
Okay. When did he find out that it was not?
When did you find out that it was not legitimate? Around 20 okay. Around 2019.
Okay, which is, well, hang on. He was in power from the 24th of August 2018. So what, early, middle, late?
Late 2019. There
What
were
did,
red flags and alarms were being raised.
okay, and what did he do about it, if anything?
He tried to brush it under the carpet.
Okay, so he was complicit in it. By not stopping it, he was part of it.
Right.
Hmm. Looks like these two characters should be in jail. I mean, not that they ever do go, but that's where they should be. Okay, let's just hold them there a minute and go to this guy.
Oh, okay.
This is Christian Porter.
Okay.
He was the acting Human Services Minister for a year between 2016 and 2017. Okay. So I'm just going to refer back to the question because I don't know any of this. So the question reads, Christian Porter was acting Human Services Minister and was given this position as he was in a previous government and had rape charges against him. Is that true?
Yes, he had allegations of rape against him. Yes.
Were they true? Did he rape anybody?
Well, according to his own personal thoughts, feelings, and opinion, that's a no. However,
Okay.
I've noticed that when we ask specifically rapists, pedophiles, serial killers, stuff like that, their justifications and their reasonings are very distorted from the reality. So we
Right.
have to ask these questions in a very different way. And the question is, did you have non-consensual sex with someone that made the allegation of rape against you? I felt they wanted it. You see, this is why you have to be so careful with the questioning. I've known this. I've spoken to so many of these people before, and they always justify it. Like they always say, "Well, she wanted me." Well, what happened when she said no? And well, no, she wanted me. She wanted me, right? So their minds, are not in tune with the reality of if somebody says no, no,
Was he
not
given, was
tonight.
he given this? Okay, was he given this job to sweep all this under the carpet? Was there a connection between him getting the job as acting Human Services Minister and the rape charges being swept under the carpet, or in order for them to be swept under the carpet?
Job to sweep all of this RoboDebt thing under the carpet. No, but it was to alleviate the burden, he just said to me. Alleviate the burden on who? The population of Australia or the government? He says both. It was to basically quash all of these cases that were being brought against the government as unfounded. So, in a way, I'm saying to him, if you quash cases that had substantial evidence uh, against the Australian government and you quash them as unfounded and no basis for any sort of trial or review, then you are complicit in all of this scandal. And he goes, that's right. These people are as crooked as they come.
All of them.
It doesn't matter which country you probe anymore. They're all the same.
Of course, that's why they go into these positions. Right, just sidetracking again. Alan Tudge. Can you grab him, please?
Okay. Yeah. Who's he?
He is the who is he exactly? He's the Human Services Minister. That's interesting. Christian Porter was acting Human Services Minister between 2016 and 2017, but I have him down here as serving as the Minister for Human Services between at the same time. So I'm not sure. Well, let's ask him the question. Were you the minister? Were you the Human Services Minister in the Australian government for 2016 to 2017?
That is correct.
Okay, what part did you play in the scandal of getting 433,000 people to repay money they did not owe to the Australian government?
He helped set it up.
Why did he do that?
It was a clever way to obtain money.
Why did the government feel the need at that time to obtain money?
It was in extreme debt.
Right. So, in other words, it hadn't managed its finance properly, so it thought it would go after the poorest people in society with a scam to extract money from them.
Exactly. Because they don't have residual funds for lawyers,
Right.
ombudsman, whatever
Yeah.
the
Yeah.
pathways.
Okay. And that's sort of very telling, and from their perspective, understandable. You don't pick on the billionaires and the multimillionaires because they will fight you with everything under the sun. You pick on the weakest members of society who are on welfare, who have no money, who can't buy back. Okay. As a result of the class action that was done against the Australian government have had to repay $1.8 billion. What does he think about that?
It's a total shamble. He says do you believe that serves them right? No. He says we give away too much money anyway. We've promised to give out a lot more than we can possibly afford.
So why do you keep making promises then that you can't afford to keep?
Why do you keep making promises that you can to get reelected?
There you go. That's the only thing. Well, he's being honest. I mean, that's the only thing. I mean, obviously, you won't say that in the 3D world, but that's the only thing politicians care about is being re-elected. Once they're elected, they do what they like. They're all self-serving. They're all corrupt, pretty much. I mean, but come election time, they do have to. I mean, look what's going on in America at the moment. It's about to happen. When we go into full-blown election season, that's all they care about is getting re-elected. Okay. Now, apparently, he went on news stations telling everybody that they're going to go to jail if they don't pay the fines. Why did he do that?
Why did you go on news stations? Because that's what they intended to do, is put people in like a debtor's prison.
And he was okay with that, was he?
You were okay with that? Fully aware.
Was he also aware that some people died as a result of his government's actions?
Are you aware that people committed suicide that died as a result of? Yes, he is aware of that.
And what's his thoughts about the families and everybody left behind because of that?
What are your thoughts about the families because of that? I don't even want to put that answer out there.
Okay.
He's cold. He just like basically said they deserved it. That's terrible.
Well, one of the things that we are learning yet again from these kind of probes is the utter contempt that these people have for the population. I mean,
I know. That's
nobody should ever listen to politicians about anything. And
no.
we contract with them. We shouldn't consent. We should keep saying no, 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 no. You know, their power comes from the fact that we keep doing what they want us to do, but we shouldn't do it. I mean, they're just they really literally don't care. I don't think we've ever probed anybody that's come across as, you know.
Someone who cares. No, they don't care. He definitely, I was really surprised by that answer. I thought maybe there'll be some regret, remorse, an apology. No, he says they deserved it. Disgusting.
Right. Okay. Let's go back. Let's hold him there and go back to Scott Morrison.
Okay.
He apparently professes to be of the Christian faith and is close to somebody called Brian Houston from the Hillsong Church. Brian's father, Frank Houston, was a paedophile, and Brian is charged with covering it up.
This
Apparently,
just
the case
gets
is
better and
ongoing.
better.
The
God.
case is ongoing in Australia. Did Scott Morrison give grants or donations to Brian Houston directly or the Hillsong Church?
Did you give donations to the Hillsong Church? He has in the past, yes.
Okay. The Royal Commissioner, Catherine Hayes, said, and quoting, Scott Morrison had misled Cabinet and failed in his duties by not ensuring the legality of a process. She also said that the evidence he gave was untrue. So, what part of his life is a good Christian? The questioner asks.
What part of your life is a good Christian? His image.
Right. Okay. We now need to grab.
Can it get any worse?
Well,
I suppose it can.
yeah, we need to grab. What's his name? Right.
Okay.
Anthony Albanese. So he's the current Prime Minister of Australia. He took over from Scott Morrison. What are his thoughts on the scandal of the 433,000 welfare recipients that were asked to repay money that they didn't owe, of which a court has found the government guilty and awarded $1.8 billion against the government in favour of the recipients?
It's a tragedy. It's a shame. What is the shame about it? Is it the fact that you have to pay them back? Well, he says all the way around. What about the people that were put in jail or died because of this? He says that too. So he actually thinks it's a shame all the way around. How are you going to pay for it? He says we'll have to find the money from somewhere. Are the taxpayers going to have to suffer the burden of this? And ultimately, yes, they will.
Hmm. At the end of the inquiry, apparently there was a sealed file with 20, which named 20 or so ministers that were involved. Will this ever become public knowledge? In other words, will it become unsealed?
No, that will
Why
always
was it?
stay top secret.
Right. Why was it sealed? Just to protect the guilty?
Why was it sealed? Um, So that they remain unknown. Why do you need them to remain unknown? Because they're, the mainstays in the government, where most people were in on this, most
Oh
of
yeah,
them were in on this, whether they
yeah.
knew to the full extent of how much they were in on it or what was going on. Some of them had no idea, but ultimately they're all responsible.
Right. So in other words, it will be buried. They'll pay back money. The taxpayer will be on the hook for the extra money. It'll cost the government, and therefore the taxpayer. So the government doesn't actually have any money; it just gets it from the taxpayer.
Right. And the biggest reason is because they don't want a total upheaval. If they knew that just about everybody was in on this, the Australian population could turn against the government and there could be a total overthrow, which is ultimately what they're scared of. So they're keeping all of that under wraps.
Right. Okay. Let's put him out 2 years, please. This
Okay,
guy.
2025. So July 18th, 2025, 6 p.m. Eastern Daylight Time. Eastern Daylight Time. Okay, what would you like to know?
Is he still Prime Minister of Australia?
Are you still Prime Minister of Australia? For now.
Okay. Do you have an upcoming election?
Is there an upcoming election? I feel like they just had one.
Okay, so he got voted back in then.
Did you get voted back in? Not necessarily. I think it's a bit too far off. And, with political stuff, it's quantum probabilities.
Okay.
I don't know. That's something that we would need to keep an eye on, because I know we have a lot of people out of Australia that follow us. But yeah, it's not looking good. When he gave me the answer for now, I'm wondering
Okay.
if that is an indication that he's going to leave.
Okay, but like today, 2 years out, he still is. Okay, what, if anything, was in the aftermath happened in the last 2 years to do with the scandal of the money fraudulently obtained from the welfare recipients? Has anything actually happened?
Well, they've put a lot of checks and balances in place in the government that now people will be held accountable if any sort of scheme or scam like this happens again.
Okay, about
And
the
I
20.
feel a lot
So,
more scams are coming out. I feel like this is not the only time. People have been overpaying for years and years and years. They're getting fined for like very minor things. The Australian government, they're nickel and diming their citizens all the time in any way that they can because their government is too big. That is so apparent to me. They have far too much government. I feel like a large percentage of the population is government, or whereas you want small government, but here the government is just into everything. It's a large government. They have a stronghold on all of their people.
well, America has an even larger government, and no government ever votes for its own demise. No government ever votes for it to downsize.
But I'm not talking about in terms of size. I'm talking about percentage. Like what percentage of the population works for the government?
Oh,
I
I
feel
see.
that it's a very large percentage of the population.
Right.
Therefore, they've got to keep this mass employment. And the way that they keep mass employment is instead of having to pay people unemployment benefits, right? They just create more government departments, fill it with more employees, and the taxpayer are basically paying the wages. There's a lot of things that need to be cut here. A lot of it can be cut through technology, but they don't. They just want it to keep people employed. There's a lot of wastage going on here.
Right. Okay, so nothing actually happened to the people who were involved in it in the government. That's all still nicely hushed up. Is that right?
Yeah, they didn't receive any penalty or anything. Yeah.
No, no one went to jail.
No one went to jail over the scandal. No, no,
Hmm.
nothing. It's all going to be put down as a big mistake.
Okay. All right.
That's pretty bad. And you're right. The more we probe into these things, the more it doesn't matter what country we even look at anymore, right? It's we get the same similar answers across the board. It doesn't matter if they're left wing, if they're right wing. It has no bearing on the character of the person at all, ever. So this is unfortunate for those people that were caught up in this, and now the taxpayers that have to pay even more to bail the government out of this massive mistake. I feel like they're having to compensate the families of people that lost loved ones that committed suicide because of this. And that's why it's costing over and above that amount of money. Some people are going to get heavily compensated. And, they basically think the welfare recipients are like the scum of the earth. And for whatever reason, don't forget, welfare recipients includes people on disability as well. And I just, let me ask this question. Were there people that were on disability that were told that they had to pay back money? Yes, there were some people that were on disability that were told they had to pay back money, that this was overpaid. And they panicked. They panicked. Well, there you go. I thought this was a really informative probe.
No, I haven't quite finished yet, Liz.
Oh, sorry.
Bringing back to December the 15th, 2023.
Okay.
Is the Australian government still bringing in migrants from the African continent?
No.
Is any other non-governmental organisation in Australia bringing in migrants from, anywhere the Middle East, the African continent, or anywhere like that?
No, they put a stop to that. I feel like they were bringing them in.
Yeah.
They needed them for the workforce. Okay. But that hasn't worked out for them. I don't feel that these people want to be in Australia. This is not their idea of a good time. They would rather go somewhere else where they're saying to me there's more opportunity for entrepreneurship, for for owning your own business, for actually being able to buy a home. All of these things in Australia now are unobtainable. They're really reserved for the very, very wealthy now. Homes in Australia, just even regular little 2-3 bedroom homes, are like almost $1 million. So again, this is they've stopped these migrants from coming in. They're in a housing crisis at the moment in Australia, and I feel that very strongly. So bringing them in and trying to house them and pay for them and feed them and educate them, give them medical care, all of those things that all citizens are entitled to. And I feel like they were invited to come to Australia as well, is what I'm getting. But now again, the government is backtracking, and I feel like some of them are being sent back. This isn't the place for you. You're not fitting in here, whatever. And they're sending them back.
Right. Okay.
All right.
That's it.
That's it. Well, that's a wrap.